What's up, Vikings faithful? Holy freaking cow. Do we have some absolutely earth-shattering news coming out of Vikings Kingdom that's going to blow your mind and make you question everything you thought you knew about this team's quarterback situation? I'm talking about developments so shocking, so dramatic, so completely unexpected that even the most seasoned purple people eaters who've survived decades of heartbreak and disappointment are scratching their heads, wondering what the hell just happened in Minnesota over the past 72 hours. We've got a quarterback meltdown that's making headlines across the entire NFL and has rival fan bases laughing at our expense. A head coach dropping F-bombs on live television like he's having a heated argument with his offensive coordinator while millions of families are watching at home. An undrafted rookie from right here in Minnesota who's quietly stealing the show or making everyone wonder if he's the real deal or just another preseason darling. Coaching staff throwing their supposed back up under the bus harder than a freight train, carrying disappointment through downtown Minneapolis, and trade rumors swirling around like a Minnesota blizzard that could completely reshape this team's future before the regular season even begins. Can you imagine walking into this season thinking you had your quarterback room figured out, feeling confident about your depth behind JJ? McCarthy, only to discover that absolutely nothing is what it seems, and everything you believed about this roster construction was built on false hope. Are the Vikings about to make a move that'll send shockwaves through the entire NFC North and potentially salvage what's looking like a complete disaster at the most important position in football? Hit that like button right now, because what I'm about to reveal is going to change how you see this team's championship aspirations, their front office decision making, and their ability to compete in one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. And trust me when I say you're not going to want to miss a single word of what went down at US Bank Stadium this weekend and in the days that followed. This is the kind of drama that makes reality TV look boring. The kind of chaos that makes you wonder if this organization has any idea what they're doing. And it's all happening right here in purple and gold with the regular season just weeks away. Picture this scene if you can. It's Saturday afternoon at US Bank Stadium. The crowd is buzzing with preseason excitement. Families are enjoying what should be a fun, low-stakes exhibition game against the New England Patriots. Kids are running around in their purple jerseys dreaming of playoff glory. And then, disaster strikes in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. We're talking about a performance so catastrophically bad that it literally broke the NFL's rating system. A display so horrific that veteran sports writers who've covered this league for decades are running out of words to describe what they witnessed. And a meltdown so complete and devastating that it's got everyone in Vikings Kingdom wondering if they've been living in a fantasy world this entire offseason. Sam Howell, the quarterback the Vikings traded for specifically to be JJ. McCarthy's reliable backup, the guy who was supposed to provide stability and veteran leadership to this quarterback room, the player who Kevin O'Connell personally vouched for when they made that deal with Seattle, delivered what might go down as one of the worst individual performances in recent Vikings preseason history and possibly one of the most embarrassing quarterback displays in the entire NFL this season. One completion out of 5 attempts for a measly 13 yards that probably should have been intercepted anyway. One interception that looked like he was playing catch with the opposing defense while wearing a blindfold, and a quarterback rating of exactly 0.0. That's so bad it actually hurts to say out loud. That's not a typo, folks. That's not some statistical error or computer glitch. We're talking about a perfect 0. The kind of number that makes you wonder if the guy forgot how to play football overnight or if he's secretly playing for the other team. But here's what makes this story even more insane and completely inexcusable. Howell wasn't playing against some unstoppable defensive juggernaut led by Hall of Fame coordinators. He wasn't facing a blitz-heavy scheme designed by some defensive mastermind who's been game planning specifically to stop him. And he wasn't dealing with injuries, equipment malfunctions, or adverse weather conditions that might explain such a catastrophic breakdown. This was supposed to be his moment to prove that the Vikings made the right call trading for him back in April. His golden opportunity to show Kevin O'Connell and the entire coaching staff that they could trust him if something happened to McCarthy during the regular season. His chance to silence any doubters who questioned whether he belonged in purple and gold. Instead, he delivered a performance so spectacularly bad that it's got people questioning whether he belongs on an NFL roster at all. let alone serving as the backup quarterback for a team with legitimate playoff aspirations in one of the most competitive conferences in football. The most embarrassing part of this entire debacle, his worst play of the day perfectly encapsulated everything that's wrong with his Vikings tenure so far. Taking a snap from center, feeling pressure up the middle from Patriots defenders who weren't even rushing that hard. Spinning directly into more pressure on his left side like he was playing amateur hour football at some local park. Then lobbing a no-chance pass toward the sideline that hung in the air so long that Patriots defenders literally had time to decide who wanted to intercept it, call dibs on the easy pick, and probably grab some popcorn while they waited for it to come down. What are you supposed to do as a head coach when your backup quarterback looks completely lost out there like he's never seen a professional defense before? How do you explain to your fan base that a guy you specifically acquired to provide security at the most important position on the field can complete a simple pass under pressure that high school quarterbacks deal with every Friday night? But wait, because if you thought Sam Howell's meltdown was the only shocking moment from this weekend, you're in for a real treat that perfectly captures just how frustrated everyone in the Vikings organization has become with the way things are going and how close this coaching staff is to completely losing their composure in public settings. Kevin O'Connell, the usually composed and media-friendly head coach who's known throughout the league for his professionalism, careful word choices, and ability to maintain his cool under pressure, was doing his second annual live interview during the third quarter of the preseason game, providing real-time analysis and behind-the-scenes insights that fans absolutely love hearing, and that gives viewers unprecedented access to how NFL coaches think during actual game situations. He's talking to Paul Allen and the broadcast team like he's done dozens of times before, explaining play calls with enthusiasm, sharing his excitement about certain formations and personnel packages, giving viewers that exclusive inside look at a head coach's mind during an actual game that you simply can't get anywhere else in professional sports. And then it happening in the most spectacular and embarrassing fashion possible. Kevin O'Connell was hyping up a specific play call that he'd been working on with his offensive coordinator all week, telling the broadcasters how excited he was about this particular motion design and how it was going to create the exact matchup they wanted against the Patriots defense, setting up what should have been an explosive gain down the field that would showcase the creativity and intelligence of his offensive system, when he suddenly realized in real time that his players were completely screwing up the execution and that his team was about to get flagged for an illegal formation penalty that would wipe out any potential gain and kill another promising drive. Excited about this play call, fellas? That's a fast motion. Oh no, fuck this. The F-bomb dropped on live television like a nuclear explosion, broadcast to thousands of families watching at home with their kids, picked up by every microphone in the stadium and transmitted across the entire Vikings radio network, instantly becoming the kind of viral moment that defines a coach's relationship with his team and gets replayed on social media for weeks. Now, we've all heard coaches curse before during heated sideline exchanges. We know that NFL sidelines aren't exactly Sunday school environments where everyone speaks in polite whispers. And most of us have probably said much worse things while watching our team make boneheaded mistakes from our living room couches while throwing snacks at the television. But there's something about hearing your head coach completely lose his composure on live television, dropping F-bombs while families are listening, that tells you everything you need to know about the current state of this team's execution, attention to detail, and mental preparation heading into what's supposed to be a crucial season for this franchise. This wasn't just a slip of the tongue or a momentary lapse in judgment from a coach who got caught up in the heat of the moment. This was pure, unfiltered frustration from a leader who's watching his players make preventable mistakes that are killing drives, costing the team scoring opportunities, and making him look like he doesn't have control over basic fundamentals that should be second nature at the professional level. You could hear the exasperation in his voice, the kind of tone that says he's tired of watching the same mental errors over and over again, despite countless hours of practice and preparation. Tired of having to explain basic concepts and responsibilities to professional football players who are making millions of dollars to execute simple assignments. Tired of seeing his carefully designed play calls get wiped out by penalties and mental mistakes that should never happen at this level of competition. What does it tell you about a team's mental preparation and focus when their head coach can't contain his frustration during a meaningless preseason game that's supposed to be about evaluation and development? How bad must practice execution and attention to detail be if this is how he reacts to seeing these same mistakes repeated in a live game situation with national television coverage? Now, here's where this story takes a fascinating turn that nobody saw coming, because while everyone was focused on Sam Howell's disaster and Kevin O'Connell's viral moment that's been replayed on every sports highlight show in America, there was another quarterback quietly making plays and turning heads throughout training camp and preseason action in a way that's forcing people to completely reevaluate their assumptions about this team's depth chart. Max Brosmer, the undrafted rookie free agent who spent just one season with the Minnesota Golden Gophers after transferring from New Hampshire following an outstanding FCS career, is starting to look like he might be the answer to problems that the Vikings didn't even know they had when they signed him for $250,000 guaranteed back in April during the post-draft signing frenzy. This isn't some feel-good local boy story that we're pushing because we want to believe in hometown heroes. And this isn't wishful thinking from desperate fans who are looking for any reason to be optimistic about their team's quarterback situation. We're talking about a 24-year-old quarterback who's demonstrating pocket presence, accuracy under pressure, and football intelligence that's making veteran observers and longtime coaching staff members take serious notice of his potential. Kevin O'Connell, who doesn't hand out praise lightly and who's worked with some elite quarterback talent throughout his coaching career, including stops with elite organizations and playoff caliber teams, has been increasingly impressed with Brosmer's ability to grasp complex concepts in one of the most difficult offensive systems to learn in professional football, a scheme that's caused problems for veteran quarterbacks with years of NFL experience. The guy threw for over 2,800 yards and 18 touchdowns with just 6 interceptions in his one season with the Gophers, completing passes with anticipation and precision over the middle of the field, which happens to be exactly where O'Connell's offense generates most of its explosive plays and where the Vikings have struggled to find consistent production from their backup quarterbacks in recent seasons. But what's really got people talking and whispering in the hallways at TCO Performance Center isn't just his college production or his preseason statistics that look good on paper. It's the way he carries himself in the huddle like a 10-year veteran, his ability to make pre-snap adjustments and audibles that show advanced understanding of defensive concepts, and his composure under pressure that looks nothing like what you'd expect from an undrafted rookie who wasn't even on most teams' radars 3 months ago and who many scouts probably never bothered to evaluate seriously. Beat writers who cover this team every single day and who've seen hundreds of quarterbacks come through this organization are starting to whisper that Brosmer might already be the most reliable quarterback in the room behind JJ McCarthy, and some are even suggesting that he's shown more consistency, poise, and command of the offense than Sam Howell has managed since arriving in Minnesota, despite having months to learn the system. Think about how absolutely crazy that sounds for a second. An undrafted rookie who most casual fans had never heard of before. The draft potentially leapfrogging a guy the Vikings specifically traded for to be their backup. A player they gave up draft capital to acquire and who they expected to be the solution to their depth problems. ESPN's Jordan Reed ranked Brosmer as the 10th best quarterback in the entire 2025 draft class, which means 32 NFL teams passed on him multiple times across 7 rounds. But now he's looking like he might have landed in the perfect situation with a coaching staff that knows how to develop quarterback talent and an offensive system that maximizes his particular skill set. What happens if this kid continues to outplay Sam Howell in practice sessions and preseason games? Are the Vikings really going to keep a struggling veteran over a promising rookie who fits their system better, costs a fraction of the money, and might actually have higher upside for future development? The writing on the wall became crystal clear and impossible to ignore when Kevin O'Connell faced the media after that embarrassing loss to the Patriots. And instead of offering the usual, Coach speak about competing hard, learning opportunities, and building for the future that we typically hear during preseason press conferences. He delivered some brutally honest assessments that left absolutely no doubt about his current feelings regarding the quarterback depth chart and the reliability of his backup options. Kevin O'Connell didn't mince words, didn't sugarcoat the situation, and didn't offer any false hope when asked directly about Sam Howell's status as the backup quarterback, essentially admitting to the entire Minnesota media that nothing is set in stone and that the competition is still open between Howell, Brett Rypien, and Max Brosmer for that crucial number 2 spot behind J.J. McCarthy that could determine this team's season if their starter gets injured. This is the same coach who usually chooses his words carefully in press conferences like he's walking through a minefield, who typically supports his players publicly even when they're struggling privately and causing problems behind closed doors, and who's built his professional reputation on being a player's coach who helps quarterbacks reach their potential and develop confidence in high-pressure situations. But when it came to evaluating Howell's performance against New England and addressing questions about the backup quarterback competition, O'Connell's tone and body language suggested a coach who's running out of patience with a player who simply isn't grasping what should be fundamental concepts in his offensive system, despite having months of preparation and countless practice opportunities to prove himself worthy of the trust the organization placed in him. There's a reason why we're playing all 3 of them, O'Connell said with the kind of diplomatic language that coaches use when they're trying to be professional while sending a clear message, which in coach speak translates to nobody has separated themselves from this group, and we're genuinely concerned about our depth at the most important position on the field heading into a season where we expect to compete for championships. Yeah, the most telling and damning moment came when reporters pressed him about Howell's decision-making on that ugly interception that perfectly summarized all of his struggles, and O'Connell gave him credit for evading pressure while acknowledging that it was a learning lesson for sure, which sounds supportive on the surface, but is actually a devastating indictment when you consider the context and expectations. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of your supposed backup quarterback, especially when you consider that the Vikings didn't trade for Howell so he could learn on the job and figure things out during live game action. They acquired him because they thought he was ready to contribute immediately if called upon, ready to step in and manage games without causing disasters that could derail an entire season. What makes this situation even more complicated and potentially explosive is that O'Connell has been consistently praising Max Brosmer's growth, intelligence, and command of the offense, while also speaking positively about Brett Rypien's experience and reliability, which suggests that Howell might actually be running third in a 3-horse race despite being the guy with the most name recognition, the highest expectations, and the biggest salary among the backup options. How do you maintain team confidence in your depth and organizational decision-making when your head coach is essentially telling the media that he doesn't trust his backup quarterback in crucial situations? What does it say about your off-season planning, evaluation process, and front office competence when the player you specifically targeted to solve a position need ends up creating more questions, more problems, and more uncertainty than you had before making the trade? But here's where this whole situation gets really interesting and potentially explosive, because while Kevin O'Connell is trying to manage the quarterback crisis diplomatically in press conferences and maintain some semblance of organizational unity, people around the league, respected analysts, and team insiders are starting to suggest that the Vikings might need to make a dramatic move to fix their backup quarterback problem before it becomes a season-ending disaster that destroys their championship aspirations. Multiple NFL analysts and team insiders who have sources throughout the league and understand how these roster construction decisions work are floating the very real possibility that Minnesota should be actively shopping for trade targets like Tanner McKee from the Philadelphia Eagles, a former 6th-round pick who's climbed the depth chart and impressed coaches with his development behind Jalen Hurts in one of the most sophisticated offensive systems in football. McKee has the size, arm talent, football intelligence, and leadership qualities that could make him a legitimate long-term backup option who could actually help this team win games if called into action. But acquiring him would require giving up significant draft capital to a Howie Roseman-led organization that doesn't make trades unless they're getting maximum value in return. Then there's the Jameis Winston option that's being discussed in league circles. A veteran quarterback with 154 career touchdown passes who could provide immediate stability, veteran leadership, and proven ability to manage games while J.J. McCarthy continues his development. Though his turnover history and larger-than-life personality might not fit the culture and system that O'Connell is trying to build in Minnesota. The most intriguing and absolutely wild possibility that's been whispered about in league circles and among people with inside knowledge is a potential Kirk Cousins reunion, which sounds absolutely insane and desperate until you consider that Atlanta might actually cut him if Drake May continues to develop rapidly and they decide to move in a different direction with their quarterback room construction and salary cap management. Cousins knows this offensive system better than anyone on the planet. He has established relationships with the coaching staff and several key players who are still on the roster, and he could seamlessly slide back into a backup role without disrupting J.J. McCarthy's development or the team's long-term plans for the future, while also providing insurance against disaster if the young quarterback gets injured or struggles early in his career. The problem with all of these scenarios is that they require the Vikings to admit that their offseason plan failed spectacularly, that Sam Howell isn't the answer they hoped he would be when they made that trade with Seattle, and that they need to invest additional resources, draft capital, and salary cap space in a position they thought they had solved back in April when everyone was feeling optimistic about their roster construction. How desperate would you have to be as an organization to consider trading for your former starting quarterback to be your new backup? What does it tell you about your current situation, your evaluation process, and your front office competence when bringing back Kirk Cousins actually sounds like a reasonable solution to your depth problems? The clock is ticking toward final roster cuts throughout the NFL, and if Sam Howell continues to struggle in the Vikings' remaining preseason games against the Titans and in whatever other opportunities he gets to prove himself, this front office might be forced to make some very uncomfortable decisions about their quarterback room construction that could define this franchise's immediate future. So here's where we stand right now, Vikings fans, and I want you to really think about what this means for your team's championship aspirations this season and beyond. You've got J.J. McCarthy, a supremely talented young quarterback who missed his entire rookie season with a knee injury and is basically making his professional debut this year with enormous expectations on his shoulders. Behind him, you have Sam Howell, a player the organization specifically acquired to provide veteran stability, who's currently struggling to complete basic passes and looking completely overwhelmed by the speed and complexity of NFL defenses. Then there's Max Brosmer, an undrafted rookie who's quietly outperforming everyone's expectations and forcing coaches to consider whether he might already be their most reliable backup option despite having zero professional experience. Add in Brett Rypien, a journeyman who's shown flashes but lacks the upside to be a long-term solution, and Kevin O'Connell, a head coach who's dropping F-bombs on live television because he's frustrated with his team's execution and preparation. This is not the stable, confident quarterback room that most championship contenders enjoy, and is definitely not the kind of depth that gives you peace of mind when you're expecting to compete in one of the most competitive divisions in football. The Bears have Caleb Williams and legitimate playoff aspirations. The Packers still have Jordan Love and one of the best offensive systems in the league, and the Lions are coming off a conference championship appearance with a roster that's only gotten better. Can the Vikings really compete with those teams if they can't figure out who their backup quarterback is going to be? What happens if J.J. McCarthy gets hurt early in the season and they're forced to rely on a guy who just threw for 13 yards and a pick against a preseason defense? The margin for error in today's NFL is incredibly thin, and teams that don't have reliable depth at quarterback rarely make deep playoff runs or sustain success over multiple seasons. Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think the Vikings should do about this quarterback situation, because we're definitely going to be following this story closely as we get closer to the regular season opener against Chicago. Are you confident in JJ McCarthy's ability to stay healthy and carry this team? Do you think Max Brosmer is the real deal or just a preseason darling? Should the Vikings be panicking about Sam Howell or giving him more time to develop in this system? This is the kind of drama that makes the offseason almost as exciting as the games themselves. And I have a feeling we're just getting started with the surprises coming out of Vikings Kingdom this year.